Hello viewers, and welcome to this walkthrough video in which we will take a look at the choosing of classroom activities for developing communicative speaking skills. So the first thing we need to be clear on is that an activity can also be assessed according to these criteria. How much practice and production it generates, how much authentic language and interaction it provides, how transparent its purposes and procedures are, how relevant it is to the learners, and how challenging and motivating it is. Now, in another video this week, we looked at a teaching speaking cycle developed by Goh and Burns, which takes us through the following 7 stages. Now, we'll just recap briefly based on the other video. The 7-stage cycle is as such. First, we, the teacher, focus the learner's attention on speaking. What do they think about the speaking activity, what it involves, and what they can anticipate? Next, we provide input. Now, this may involve pre-teaching vocabulary, language expressions, discourse features, and planning for the activity they will carry out in class. So here is where we provide, helpful language. Then we run the task. Students practice a communicative speaking task, and the focus is on fluency, not on accuracy. We just want to get them talking. Then, we conduct the speaking task. We sort of turn their attention back to the strategies, the language. We have them examine their performance, or they could look at other performances. They could look at transcripts of how the task could be done. And again, we revisit, what is the task all about and how is it done effectively? Then we do the speaking task again. So this time they have a little more input, a little more guidance, and hopefully they do a better job and they feel more confident the second time round. Then to close off, we guide them in reflection. We ask them to reflect on what they've learned, what difficulties they encountered, and we provide some feedback on their performance. Okay, so again, these 7 steps. Now, it seems like it's going to be perhaps a lot for some of you if you're thinking, but I only have 50 minutes or an hour. Well, then it's up to you to figure out how to incorporate or integrate these steps, perhaps combining them. Perhaps you might skip one. But really, quite crucial is to definitely provide input, conduct the task, hopefully have time to repeat it so they can improve, and then reflect on it. All right. Well, let's take a look at what most teachers deal with in looking at course material. Okay, so here's my situation. Imagine we're teaching a group of vocational learners who are developing their English for a specific purpose. They are training to become secretaries and personal assistants, and they need to be able to carry on a conversation with a caller on the telephone. Perhaps this is part of their final oral speaking exam. Now, you have a class session of 1 hour to do something with speaking. So what's the first stage? We focus their attention on speaking. You can ask them questions. When talking on the phone with a caller, what do you find challenging? Why is talking to someone on the phone different than reading and responding to an email? Why might talking on the phone be more or less challenging than talking to someone face-to-face in person? So you have a quick brainstorm here and sort of call their attention on a meta level to what speaking is all about, especially on a telephone. By the way, the following course material is taken from this student's book. Okay, so I look through the table of contents and I find a focus on a speaking activity, which is getting through on the telephone. Okay, cool. Here's where the second stage comes in. We provide input. So it's a listening activity. A business journalist is writing an article about fitness centers. He telephones Life Health Clubs to arrange an interview. Listen to the conversation. And there are some lower order questions about the listening activity. So the input is through listening. Now, work with a partner and complete the chart. So they have to fill in gaps based on what they have heard. And it mimics, it models a telephone call, right? Listen and check, and then they can practice reading it out loud. Now, this is what's known as controlled practice. There's no freedom here. They're told what to read and interact in this dialogue, but it's still providing input. Now, the thing with course books is they're going to provide lots of lead up. And maybe as the teacher, you decide, okay, this is enough. I don't have time for more. But there are other activities you could choose from. Match expressions, right? And here, students are given chunks of useful language that they can then use themselves. So either you decide, ooh, I'm definitely going to do this one, but I'm going to skip this one because I don't have time. Or, ooh, I like this one because it's nicely concrete, it gives them chunks, but I'm not going to do this one. Again, you have to make choices based on the time available. Or you might just call their attention to these key expressions, right? Go over them, explain them, read them out loud, and model good pronunciation for your learners. Again, this is all the input stage. And as I say, course books will have lots and lots of input, but you may need to make executive decisions on what to cut. Now, most course books, when conducting the speaking task, this is what they'll provide you with. What's called an information gap activity. So here's the part where your learners work with a partner and they have a conversation. So student A turns to page 84 where they see this. And student B turns to page 92 of the course book where they see this. Okay, so student A begins the conversation, wants to speak to Al Tyson. He's in a meeting, offers to take a message. Check the name and the telephone number. Say you will give the message. Now student B has this information. They want to talk to Al Tyson. If he's not there, leave a message. So you can see that there's a dialogue required here, right? So role play, okay, they give it a go. They conduct the task. Now at this stage, give them time to practice it. They'll be nervous, they'll be laughing, that's fine. You are walking around the room, monitoring, or if you're teaching online and they're in breakout sessions, then you're popping in to check how they're doing. And you can be providing a focus back on, key phrases, steering them forward. Now they repeat the task. Now most course books will offer you multiple options. So here's conversation 2. It's up to you to make the executive decision as the manager, the leader, or teacher in the room. Do you have them work with a new partner on conversation 2? Or perhaps because they just got the hang of it and with a feeling of safety in mind, let them talk to their partner for conversation 2. But the idea is that they get to try it again. And hopefully, conversation 1 will go more smoothly than conversation 2, right? Practice making perfect. Now, we reach stage 6. Here's where you reflect with your learners. Okay, everybody, quiet down. Hi, eyes up here, everyone. Okay, now that we were all done, let's talk to each other. They could do this in pairs. It depends how noisy and enthusiastic the group becomes. This is your choice to make. But they could be reflecting on what they found difficult, why it was difficult. Was it difficult for everyone? Did some of you have other struggles? What worked? What was satisfying? Now, this might be nice to have them, if you have time, have them talk to each other in small groups or pairs for 5 minutes, then report back to the whole group, right? And name one strategy or chunk of language you learned which can help you in the future. How will you use this? So you call them back to the key phrases, the input material, and at least they walk away with one strategy or chunk, if not more. And then the final stage, it's important to provide feedback, right? You are the expert in the room. Here's where you could be providing feedback on pronunciation. And generally what has worked for me is to do this in an anonymous fashion. So not looking at specific or naming any students, but as you're monitoring and walking around the room as they're conducting the task, you can be making notes on good language that you hear, where students may have struggled, where they may have, for example, mispronounced massage, right? This is your chance then as the expert in the room to provide feedback in an anonymous way. Hey everyone, so I heard one conversation and they pronounced the word massage. What is the correct way to say the word, right? Then this is a safe, encouraging means of providing feedback and language correction. Okay, now what I'd really like to do is take a closer look with you all at two other, make this smaller. There we go. So we can see our 7 stages, and what we've got here is these course books. Okay, this is from the new edition, Basic Survival. It's based on, well, it's basically for business people. Here's where, okay, let's look at it and see if how this follows the stages, and if not, how can we tweak the material? Okay, so there's no meta focus, right? That you'll have to come up with yourself if you have time and you decide to include this stage. There is, as most course books have, lots of input, listening activities, right? In which they're learning the language they will need to complete the task, which is talking to other people on board an airplane. Then, okay, lots of input, right? Listen, fill in the blanks. Now we get to the a bit of controlled practice. So they're mimicking and reading what they've heard here. That's a good chance to work on pronunciation. Now they're listening and filling in gaps. So that's just straight ahead comprehension. Now, here's the role play element. Look at conversations B and C above. So there's their input. And make more conversations. Now, what I find lacking in this particular activity is there's no real free role play and or an opportunity for students to conduct the task, then repeat, and then get feedback. It's all very sort of controlled input. What about this page? Let's see if I can get it. Oh, it's not popping up. Okay, let me show you a different book, and that is a series that I've used that I like quite a lot called Headway. Now, here we've got pre-intermediates. This is basically A2 level. And one thing you need to get good at as a teacher is looking through the books and looking through the table of contents. I don't want to teach grammar. I'm not so much interested in vocabulary. I want, there it is, speaking. Now, I'm particularly interested in doing another activity with my group on phone calling, right? But maybe one that's a little bit more fun. Okay, here's one on the phone. Well, let's turn to that page and see what this offers. Aha. Okay, so again, there is no meta focus activity, so that you'd come up with on your own. But there again is lots of input, listening, and then practice pronouncing. There are some thoughtful questions here that you might want to deal with during class. So this gets some dialogue going and it activates their prior knowledge, right? This is a listening activity. Again, listening and filling in the blank. And now is where we get to some input, some chunks of language. And now the role play. And here we go. It's the typical what's called information gap activity. So student A has one bit of information, student B has another bit of information. Here's what student A sees. Okay. You're going to have telephone conversations. Call a friend. You can't meet on Tuesday, suggest Thursday, agree what to do. This is phone call 1. But what does student B see? Oh, the signal's bad. Ask your friend to repeat what they said, agree what to do. So again, here's our stage where they conduct the task. You can be calling them back, call their attention back to the phrases and the chunks of language, right, which are here. Okay. What I find, oh yeah, and here, I'm afraid his line's busy. Sorry, and this will be breaking up. I couldn't hear that. So direct them back if they're struggling, help them improve, and now they repeat the task. Again, they could switch partners or not, it's up to you, and they do phone call 2. Student A, student B, right? Information gap. What if you have an extra student? Well, that student could be a monitor. That student could be silent and sit in and observe the other two having a conversation and make notes. And for example, do they struggle? Do they use the chunks that are provided? Do they use any words in the native language? So that third person could be what's called a monitor. Let's look at one more. Again, it's from the Headway series. Okay, so this is pre-intermediate. And what you'll notice as a teacher is that lots of books are accompanied by teachers' resource books, workbooks. These are also terrific resources because quite often they give you ready-made lesson plans that you then tweak and tailor-make to fit your audience. So here we have a pre-activity. And what's the aim? Asking and answering questions about people and things that are important to you. Okay, so they need to learn about how to formulate questions, and they're practicing fluency. It's a speaking skill. Cool. Write on the board a name, a date, a phone number, an object, a book, a song that are important to you personally. And here you've got some ready-made cards for that. Tell the students they have to ask you questions to guess why these things are important. Is this your parents' phone number? Does this song remind you of someone? They can ask 3 questions for each category, right? And what's happening here is this is the input. You are modeling for them as the expert in the room how they're going to do this for themselves. Okay. And then you can write a summary on the board. And then you give each of them, you put them in pairs, give each of them a worksheet. They do step 1, right? And then when everyone's ready, they're in groups of 4 and they take turns looking at each other's completed worksheets. And again, here fluency is the most important focus, not accuracy. You know, they may be confused about how to spell something. You can help them on that, but make clear that the focus here is on talking to people and not get all caught up on how you spell the word on the worksheet. So as modeled in the pre-activity, they're now asking each other questions and they're conducting an information gap style activity. And while they're speaking, your job is to go around monitoring. Helping is necessary, but don't get sucked into their conversations. Quite often students will ask you to take part and then you end up taking over. And then there's too much teacher talking time. Let them do the speaking, right? Make a note of errors that you could deal with later. And then, of course, do the feedback and reflection. And if you're looking for what's called an extension or a post activity, have them write a paragraph. Again, a productive skill to a productive skill, right? So they speak about it and then they write about it. And that could be the homework that's shared in class the following week. What we see, though, is that indeed, course books are your friend. They will help you to meet the stages in the cycle and design good activities that will aid your learners. I hope this has helped and enjoy. Bye for now.